9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Live from Swansea, this is the Twilight Show with Nathan Gynn.
Bora pal, croeso i Abertawe, everyone. Welcome to Swansea, the Twilight Show. Tonight we are talking about onboarding, the importance of employee induction. If you've been lucky enough to find yourself a teacher, a new teacher to join your school, how are you going to hold on to them? What do they need to know? How can we make it more than just handing in the staff handbook? Off we go.
Live from Swansea, this is the Twilight Show with Nathan Gynn on Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
Bora pal, croeso i Abertawe. Hello everyone, welcome to Swansea, welcome to the Twilight Show here on Teachers Talk Radio. And of course, we are live, so if you want to message us through the Podbean app, you can hit the chat as we go. We'll read those out, share your thoughts. If you want to call in, you can do it too. Share some of your experiences, share some of your thoughts. And of course, if you're listening back to this as a podcast, you can still follow us on at TT Radio Official on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook. Find us there, join the conversation, share your thoughts, let us know what you think. Now, I said there in the introduction, let's rewind a little bit. We'll tell you about the origins of my thoughts on this show. So we are at that time of year where there are new faces popping up in school, and maybe this is at your school too, but certainly at my school, you know, we've had successful interviews, applicants, they have joined us, and we are starting to meet them. I'm trying not to use the words that we're going to use later on. We're starting to meet them for the first time, so they may be popping in for a day here, a day there, you know, maybe doing some September visits to get to know everyone. Maybe they're joining a few staff meetings. Maybe they're doing a few transition meetings to get to know the school and the people. And that got me thinking about how do we, what experience have I had? I'll be really interested to hear what experiences you've had of starting at a new place of work, you know, as an experienced teacher maybe, or even as a NQT or an ECT, depending on where you work. But those have some fairly structured rigor to them now. I'm maybe talking about moving schools as an experienced teacher, or fairly early in your career, but already past that NQT stage. So when you join the school, what information are you giving? What support package is put around you? How are you brought up to speed? All of these words. Now, there have been others. As we go through, you'll see that in different parts of the world, in different businesses, because we're going to share some examples from different businesses as well. It's really interesting, as I've researched for this show, finding some examples of what people wider than education do about this. A new hire comes in, some people talking about it as orientation, some people talking about it as induction, which is the most common one that I've heard in the UK in education, but the one that I've favoured at the moment, which is onboarding. And maybe we can discuss that a little bit as we get through as well. Why do I feel that word suits better the purposes of my ideal experience of a new members of staff? Now, I wanted to start us off and kind of just get the ball rolling with a little bit of reading from a blog. It's from Tribal Habits, tribalhabits.com if you want to look it up. It's entitled The Importance of Employee Induction. And this is general. We're not talking just education here. This is general. And it starts off by talking about a study that says a strong onboarding process improves new hire retention rates by 82%. So that's keeping hold of the staff. And we know that at the moment, even keeping teachers in teaching is a problem, but certainly we should all be thinking about retention rates. It improves it by 82%. But they also go on to say this same study found that employee productivity increased by over 70%. So, we've got this twofold thing here, not just keeping staff, but them being more effective. In my head, first of all, when I was thinking about this, and I don't know how this applies to your schools, your experiences, your teaching, but for me, that period of getting up to speed, feeling confident in what you're doing, knowing all the routines and the expectations, even the memorizing the code for the photocopier, those things take time, and surely if we can do that quicker, then we're going to be more effective as educators, as a team. Those things will happen. Now, it goes on to say, there was more research here by Robert Half, and this blog does come from Australia, so it talks about 59% of Australian hiring managers had an employee resign during probation due to poor onboarding processes. 43% of managers lost new employees within a month of hiring them. So that's, maybe there's something to do with our advertising there, possibly, but also, in the wider world of work, where maybe there aren't these transfer windows like in education, people are moving on quickly. They step into the job, they get a feel for it quickly. It'd be interesting to find out, in your school, how long did it take for you to get a real feel, to make up your mind about whether that was the right place for you, what the ins and outs were? How quickly did you make that decision? Because this would suggest, we're talking by the first half term, you know what you're getting, and you could make a decision about whether you wanted to stay or not within that first half term. I think where we are in education at the moment, this is going to be really interesting, because if there's a shortage of teachers, does that mean that transitory rates, transitory rates will increase? Will we see teachers moving around more? Teachers join a school, might join in September, make your mind up by half term that, do you know what, actually this isn't a good fit for me. This isn't the right place for me. Or I've joined and the head teacher still hasn't said hello to me. I've been here a month. I'm going to move on because I can, because there are jobs out there. Maybe that's something to worry about. They go on in the blog to talk about the benefits, and we're going to skate over these because we're really going to unpick it in detail. But I wanted to give that overview at the start of the show here, so we can get into it really. But the benefits, they say, of a structured employee induction program makes new employee feel respected. Tell me this: when you joined a new school, was that a feeling that you had? The last school you joined, when you joined, did the induction process make you feel respected for what you were bringing? Or did you feel, again, like a newbie, which would be somewhat more of my experience moving between schools? Is, you join, and no matter how experienced you are, you're starting at the start again. You're a newbie, you know nothing, because you don't know where the nearest toilet is, or you don't know the correct fire route down if the alarm goes off when you're teaching down the corridor at the back of the school. Does it make you feel respected? Does it optimize orientation tasks? And their version of this, what they talk about as orientation, and I quite like this. This will be something for us to unpick as well. Orientation being the basics, the fundamentals, using, logging into payroll system, using the photocopier, all those kind of standard tasks, how to unlock the staff toilets, those kind of things. Orientation, does it make that efficient and effective, get those into people quickly? Number 3 they give is, does it increase employee retention? Now, we talked about that. I think that's going to be a common theme as we come through, is about people making up their minds early about whether that school is a good fit for them, whether it's the right place for them, whether they're going to invest in it, and whether the school's going to invest back in them. Is that something that we're going to look at? Is that something that you look at when you're bringing a new staff member on board? Number 4 here, does it open communication lines? Does your induction process help the person being inducted, your onboarding, as I'm hoping to transition to a saying, does your onboarding, do your new starters integrate with the people they're going to work directly with, and as well as those with other functions, so that they know what those lines of communication are? Or are you a month in on a job having to still ask, who organises this? Who do I speak to about getting more credit on my photocopying? Who do I need to speak to about a query I have on uniform? If that stuff's being drip fed, maybe it's a choice. Maybe we don't want to overload people. But if that stuff isn't there at people's fingertips, are we really being effective communicators? Number 5 for them, does it develop a workplace culture of inclusiveness? And this for me is something, again, as we go through, we'll unpick and pull apart and some American examples that we've got to share about and discuss today. It is a different take on it for me. It says here 40% of Australians feel lonely at work. And I've thought about that, and actually, what are the social aspects of your induction process? And actually, if we are having to look at them feeling grateful that we gave them a job, us feeling grateful that we've managed to recruit, how are we valuing our staff? And that, inclusiveness, connectivity at work, and particularly, as it says, being with our co-workers, feeling part of the team. It's a really interesting aspect. Do you, in your school staff induction, have social elements at the start of the school year when you have potentially new joiners? And, it is, maybe I'm being stereotypical there by suggesting that all new staff will start at the start of the year, and maybe we need to think about that more. But is your first staff event at Christmas? If you've got all of these new people joining in September and your first social is at Christmas, that seems like something we should think about, and things that we should think as part of our induction process. How are we dealing with those social elements? Number 6 for them is, does your induction win the talent battle? They talk about, being on the great place to work list. And, this is something that I'm thinking about more and more now. Should we be thinking about our places of how do we make them great places of work? And actually, when a new person joins, if they're just handed a pack of manuals to read, here's the fire procedure, here's our teaching and learning policy. If we're not making it more than that, we would do more than that for our young people that we work with. So why aren't we doing more than that from our staff? Is it a good and effective and engaging way of learning, and does it treat them with respect? And the final one that they've got here is, does it save money and time? Now, I do wonder that when we talk about, these inductions or onboarding, as I'm trying to call them, as we move through, is it saving time? Is it saving money? Is it making us more effective? Because that should be the crux of it for us now. Not only are teachers hard to recruit, but money is tighter in education at the moment. And actually, is it efficient and is it effective for us to just let people find out? Are we getting the most bang for our buck if it took teachers till Christmas to become their most effective and authentic selves in the classroom? Are we really truly being effective with our finances and our budget if we're leaving that to chance, if we're leaving people to sink or swim and then to leave us? Because as we know, retention, turnover, there is an investment that needs to be made in new staff when they join. And so there is a cost element to it. Now, what I wanted to do before we really get into it is I want to share a couple of important messages from some of our sponsors who I really do rate.
It's time for a fresh start to language learning. Pearson EdXL's new student-centred French, German and Spanish 2024 GCSEs cater to the needs of all learners, regardless of their background, ability or reason for studying. Rooted in learned language knowledge, their assessments are transparent and accessible, allowing all students to showcase their language skills. Through inclusive and relatable content, the new Pearson EdXL MFL GCSEs build a shared cultural capital that helps students develop an understanding of and appreciation for the wider world. Find out more at go.pearson.com/MFL GCSE 24.
This programme has been brought to you by The Happy Confident Company. Our clinically approved, ready-to-go wellbeing and mental health programme will help your pupils thrive. In only 10 minutes a day, you'll be able to deliver social and emotional learning and wellbeing tools throughout your school. To find out more, visit us at www.happyconfident.com.
Live from Swansea, this is The Twilight Show with Nathan Gynn on Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
Borodar Pab Croeso Abatawi. Hello everyone, welcome to Swansea, welcome to the Twilight Show here on Teachers Talk Radio with me, Nathan Gynn. Now, if you've just joined us, we are talking about onboarding. It's my new favourite word. You know, if you don't use that word, induction, staff induction, or orientation, you know, I'm talking about when a new person joins your team. How do you get the information about what your school is, how you do things, how do you get that information into them? And, you know, we started a little bit general talking about, you know, the aims and approaches and the benefits of effective onboarding at a general level, you know, for all businesses. I want to get into teaching though. And some of these things, if you're listening live, share your thoughts, share what kind of support you got when you joined a new school, whether it was good or whether it was bad, whether you're, you know, suggesting improvements. Because I'm going to read out, and this is, you know, I randomly picked a local authority in England and printed off one of their guides to what induction, as they call it, should look like for new staff. And it is very much how I am used to being inducted to schools. When we go on to hear some examples from other businesses and schools in other countries, I think it's going to really shock us. It really shocked me. Okay, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Don't forget, you can tweet us at TT Radio Official. Follow us on Instagram as well. Same username there. Now, developing an induction program. This is from a local authority, Oxfordshire. It wasn't picked through choice, or, you know, it was the top one there, but they all seem very much similar. So I picked one, and this is it. So developing an induction program. And remember, this is for new school staff, new teachers. So the things they say that you should do. And the first one, top of the list here, tour of the school and introduction to school facilities. Yeah, that, you know, general. Introduction to colleagues. Okay, there are different ways. When we go through some really good examples, there are different ways of doing that. There's introduction to colleagues, like walking to staff and, hey everyone, this is Mr. Gynn. On we move. Leave me there to make a cup of tea. Or there's more, you know. And I've talked about the social element of retention and recruitment already, being seen as a good employer. You know, it's a changing world out there for teacher recruitment. Health and safety protocols and requirements, yeah. Employee self-service and other pay information, yeah. You know, this kind of orientation type stuff, I'd be calling this. The school's code of conduct, the KICSI, you know, if you're in England, keeping children safe. The job description, the school's policies and procedures, including safeguarding, acceptable use of ICT, requirements for reporting absence. I mean, you know, I'm already half asleep. I'm excited. I've joined a new school, and you're killing me with policies and procedures already. You know, terms and conditions of employment, for example, claiming expensive, requesting time off, and specific job training. Okay, so that's, you know, a tick list of paperwork as far as I can say. And I'm not being against, you know, the specific local authority here, but, you know, perhaps you've been through similar. That is bare minimum stuff, I think. And if that is enough, does that make me feel valued? Does that make me feel, you know, in a buyer's market as the employee? I've just joined as a teacher. I know that there are plenty of jobs out there. Does sitting me in a room and telling me to read the school's policies on acceptable use of ICT, you know, is that the best way to get me up to speed quickly, to bring me on board? They do say some other examples within it, you know, Timetable of induction activities to cover the employee's first weeks and months. Okay, arrange regular review meetings to see how things are going on. It's good practice to assign a buddy. Okay, right. So that is our base level. We are talking about there what most teachers, I would say, in the UK experience when they join a new school. Maybe a quick tour, dip into the staff room to meet some people, and a lot of policies and procedures to read through. Now, if that is what we want from our induction, if that is we think then you are ready to teach, I worry that all of this talk about our school is different because of our vision and values, right? Really, in there, if you are just giving me a piece of paper that says, here are our vision and values, and our vision and values are, be the best you can be, is giving me a piece of paper to read that on being the best you can be. I think there's something to be said here about living our values and showing our shared values through experience. And I wanted to share a blog here. This one's from whitbyschool.org. It's a blog. The title of it is Why Teacher Induction Programs Are a Necessity for the Start of the School Year. They talk about developing a solid teacher induction program can ease the transition for new staff, giving them time, support, and relationships they need to thrive. Now, it's interesting. We hear that dropped in again there, the word relationships. I know in that Oxfordshire kind of induction thing, there was introduced to colleagues, but introduce is very different to build relationships as I read that. And I think if you're, a different take on it, maybe we're expecting more now. Anyway, Whitby School here. Induction is an umbrella term for the support put in place to assist teachers in adapting to a new workplace culture. Okay, and again, we're getting this idea that there's something different about a workplace more than just it being a different location. Okay. They say induction goes beyond understanding students, classes, and curriculum. And I'd agree there. There is more. Hopefully, there is more to our schools. Potentially, maybe if you are moving within an academy chain or a federation, maybe there are some similarities in the expectations or the way things are done. Maybe there are. But if you're moving from school or to different parts of the country, I think that's different. I really do. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you're listening live, or of course you can tweet me, tweet into one of these our links, and let me know what your thoughts on induction programs are and how we make them effective, onboarding of new staff. They again say, the goal is to provide a safe environment to ask questions. They say relationships are crucial to a supportive induction program. And I think this is something that is missing somewhat in our approach to it. By supporting new teachers, you support students and their learning. And this is a tagline across the blog. And I couldn't agree with that more. I think, supporting teachers is supporting students. I've had this argument many times where people talk about, actually we should be thinking about what's good for the student. I think what's good for the teacher is good for the student. I think if we support the teachers, that feeds through to the students. That's some kind of trickle-down support that I'm advocating there. But I really do think that works. And they suggest that we build a network of others experiencing the same thing. And this, I'm not sure that I've seen done when I've started a new time as someone else. And when I reflect on it, when I have started a job, and okay, so in small schools, this is maybe harder. Maybe only one person's joining at a time. But when I have started alongside others, there has been a camaraderie because, as they say in this blog, we have the same worries. We have similar questions and experiences. And those things bring us together and allow us a safe place to ask them. And as we go through, I would ask you that to reflect. Is there space within your induction for someone to ask a question that they feel might make them look stupid? Or is it part of an extended interview where they feel they have to prove themselves? They're lucky enough that you've given them a job. Are we still in that mindset of thinking that they're lucky enough to have gotten a job and so they still have to prove themselves? Or is it a safe space to ask a stupid question? Because believe it or not, as someone who's moved between different schools and even different countries, you guys call stuff different things. And it might sound like a stupid thing to ask what they mean by marking. But I tell you now, it means something different in every school. And is there a safe place for them to do that? So yeah, Whitby School, they're advocating very much a personal, maybe not personal isn't the right word, a collegiate approach to our onboarding of building relationships to help them. And does your process do that? Do you use a buddy? Do you think about how people relate to others? Or is your joining the team merely dumping someone in the staff room and announcing their name and hoping that people will find them? Because again, it might not be the right people, and it might not be the people who can help the most. And if you're building a culture at your school, I think there's an opportunity there for you to think about how you place people with people, and maybe not just their line managers. Maybe the best person to support them is someone who was new the year before and knows the way through. Now, I want to reflect on a bit of information here produced by the Chartered Institute for Professional Development, and they really take an in-depth look at induction as a process. Again, we are now broad. Again, we're talking about whole organization, the whole breadth of organizations here, not just education. But I think, if we're to grow and develop, we need to look outside what's always been done by schools, because what's always been done by schools is what I described in the Oxfordshire example there, which is you turn up and you get given the school's acceptable use of ICT policy, and you have to read through that and probably some more and check the fire things. And okay, so all of these things are important. But are they the most important, or are we doing them effectively to get that information into staff and focus on things that maybe produce a more long-term effective impact on teaching and learning and on our young people? Right, back to the Chartered Institute of Professional Development. You can find them at cipd.org. And employees' first impressions of an organisation have a significant impact on their integration within the team and job satisfaction. We talked about that earlier. Induction is an opportunity for an organisation to welcome their new recruit, help them settle in, and ensure they have the knowledge and support they need to perform their role. From employer, effective induction also may also affect employee turnover, absenteeism, and employer brand. Now, this is the first time this word comes up as employer brand, but it is one that I really like. I heard, I think it was on the episode on Teachers Talk Radio for My New Term. They were guests on it. They were talking about that kind of talent management aspect. You should go back and listen to that. I think it was a Tom Rogers show with My New Term. I think if you type that into the search bar at ttradio.org, you'll be able to track back through the podcast. But there was a part of that episode where they were talking about something similar to employer brand, and what makes you a good employer, and do people want to work for you, and how you do that. Induction sits in there for me. It's not just CPD, that continuous, it's that initial PD, that start, how we welcome them. So let's go back to this article and this research. They say induction is the process through which employees adjust or acclimatise to their new jobs and working environments. I think that's fair. I think expecting people to hit the ground running in education as we stand at the moment with such diverse and varied approaches to teaching, I think it's a really difficult one. They again pull out the difference between orientation and induction, that orientation being just the paperworky stuff. I'd say most schools do orientation. Some schools maybe do good induction. Rarely do I see really good onboarding, bringing them in. The purpose of induction they give is that an effective induction ensures that the employees will integrate well and across their new organisation. I like that. You are integrating to, assimilated into the Borg. You're brought in. But I think it's something we need to recognise. We do things the way we do them, and you've probably, in your school improvement plan and in your staff meetings, invested an inordinate amount of time in, this is the way we do things here. This is our approach to marketing. This is our approach to behaviour management. You've got to get all of that into someone new who's probably been drilled and trained just the same way you've done, but in a different way, into a different way of doing things. And you're going to have to unpick that and get them doing things the way you want them done. That's a big job. And I don't think that giving them a sheet with your teaching and learning priorities is going to do that effectively. Maybe you'd argue different. If you want to argue, by all means, pop it in the chat or tweet us at TT Radio Official. And we can talk it out. But, I'm going to take some convincing. Anyway, the CIPD, they talk about the benefits of an effective induction program. Effective induction programs can benefit both employers and employees. For employers, the benefits include reducing turnover, absenteeism, increased employee commitment and job satisfaction. For employees, a well-designed induction program enables them to understand more about the organisation, their role and their ways of working, as well as opportunities to meet new colleagues, learn from them and get up to speed quickly. There's so much to unpick in that I really like, and I don't think we reflect on enough. Understand more about the organisation. I remember in other businesses when I've joined, part of the induction was the history of the organisation and how it has changed. I wonder, do you talk about the history of your school? How recently things have changed? What's changed and why? Or are we just getting in new staff to repeat the old mistakes? Their role and ways of working, their role within the organisation, what the expectations on them beyond job description for me as well. A job description does not tell you how to do your job. Your role is something more than that, and how you integrate and work with others. Opportunity to meet new colleagues, sure. I think they underplay that a little for me, where we're going with this. I think there's something more to working together than just meeting new colleagues. Learn from them. I really like, who's a good example of what? In your induction program, I would ask you this. Do you highlight, do they shadow people? Are they supernumerary for any amount of time? And I know this is hard, particularly in a primary school. If you've got someone to start teaching in September, that's because you need a class teacher for September. It's hard to have additional time. Maybe in your ECT year, maybe as an NQT, you might have additional time. But, if you've just employed a new teacher, have you built in time for them to shadow people showing the things you want them to see, not just because they are the person who's there? It goes on in this article to talk about professionals increasingly recognise the value of an employer brand as part of the induction process. In many cases, this has led to a focus on the onboarding and induction process to ensure it reflects the employer brand and values the organisation and the values the organisation is promoting. I do think that. I think, if you have on your staff from Wall, we value everyone, does your induction value everyone, or is it very much a paperwork exercise? They give some things to avoid. And sadly, I think we might recognise some of these as educational professionals. What to avoid? Avoid providing too much too soon. The inductee must not be overwhelmed by a mass of information, especially on the first day. Okay. That's happened to me. Boom. Here's the handbook. Here's 200 names. Here's everyone all at once that you need to meet. Pitching presentations at an inappropriate level. Where possible, presentations should be tailored to take into account prior knowledge of new employees. I come back to this. You're a new to that school teacher, not a new teacher. Those are different things. Are we pitching them the same? Are we taking a teacher with 15 years experience and sticking them in a room with the ECTs and saying, right, you've all got to talk about behaviour management in the same way? That pitch is off for me. They talk about it's delivered by HR rather than local managers providing all the information. Okay, that's big company talk. But for me, that's, who is delivering your induction? Is it people on the ground? And actually, the reality is you've probably got teaching assistants in some schools who would be better at giving the advice for the true ins and outs of how to navigate the school than some of our senior leaders. Is creating the induction program that generates unreasonable expectations by overselling the job. I think we see that in a lot of stuff we do when we put together our job roles, our job specs, all of those things. Are we just putting everything in there? Is that too much? Do we need to simplify down, talk about the key things? And also creating an induction program that focuses only on administration and compliance, but doesn't reflect the organisational values. I think that's there. If you've got written across your staff room wall, team first, whatever, we work together, and then you're giving someone a handbook to read in the staff room alone. How do those two match up? Okay. Where that leaves us is, I want to, the other side of the news, because we're going to pop to the news in a second, but I want to talk through some of the theory behind this. I've got a great piece of reading for us to share and for us to talk through about the theory behind what good induction should look like. We've started off here, we've talked about some of the pros, some of the cons. I'm formulating an idea of what I want induction to look like for me. And I don't want it to look like induction. That's the reality. I've had too much orientation. I'm tired of induction because where we are now with educational recruitment, we need to be thinking more about onboarding our staff and keeping them on board. Now we'll see the other side of the news to talk a little bit more.
It's time for a fresh start to language learning. Pearson EdXL's new student-centred French, German and Spanish 2024 GCSEs cater to the needs of all learners, regardless of their background, ability or reason for studying. Rooted in learned language knowledge, their assessments are transparent and accessible, allowing all students to showcase their language skills. Through inclusive and relatable content, the new Pearson EdXL MFL GCSEs build a shared cultural capital that helps students develop an understanding of and appreciation for the wider world. Find out more at go.pearson.com/MFL GCSE 24.
This programme has been brought to you by the Happy Confident Company. Our clinically approved, ready-to-go wellbeing and mental health programme will help your pupils thrive. In only 10 minutes a day, you'll be able to deliver social and emotional learning and wellbeing tools throughout your school. To find out more, visit us at www.happyconfident.com.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
The Universities and Colleges Employers Association, UCEA, is playing down the impact a marking boycott is having on students. This is the view of the University and College Union, according to a report on the BBC. The UCEA represents 144 institutions and has released a survey which suggests most student graduations are not being affected by the boycott. This is contrary to the UCU view that this survey accounts for fewer than half of universities. Some students have graduated without their final marks, whilst others have seen graduations delayed. The boycott is part of a long-running dispute over pay and conditions, which has been previously reported on Teachers Talk Radio News. Many students have complained about the lack of communication around the impact of the boycott from their universities, whilst others highlight the fact that it is coming at the end of an already fragmented experience of university brought about by the impact of the pandemic. Whilst the UCEA survey suggests that the impact on students is different in each university, its chief was keen to say it showed that the majority of students were not facing a graduation without their final marks, although Raj Jethwa was quick to point out that this would be little comfort to those who were affected. The industrial action in the higher education sector is just part of a wider action being taken by those in education. But Sky News and other outlets reported that PM Rishi Sunak, could be considering a block on recommendations by peer review bodies from across the public sector. The teaching peer review body presented its recommendations to ministers, and it is expected to be published next month. Leaked reports suggest it could be a proposal of 6.5%. Government sources deny the claims made originally in the Times, but stated that pumping money into the economy risks fueling inflation. In an editorial in The Guardian, recruitment and retention problems were highlighted again, with some alarming figures suggesting that 1 in 4 new teachers leave the profession within 3 years. The piece goes on to cite the huge range of issues that schools deal with, including sexual harassment and bullying, as well as home circumstances and their effects. This view was further emphasised this week with a report from The Observer focusing on the stresses being placed on pupil referral units. The units cater for children who have been excluded from mainstream schools. But leaders are now saying they are full to bursting because of unprecedented levels of behaviour incidents in schools. Data suggests that permanent exclusions are rising after a brief lull on the return to school after the pandemic. The former Children's Commissioner Anne Longfield says in the report that schools are buckling under the pressure of children with complex needs, and cites cuts to public services, leaving a lack of support in its wake. She called the situation a disaster for vulnerable children. A former head teacher of a PRU in Stockton-on-Tees said she had dealt with children spitting, kicking and swearing. Her school had previously tried to take children on short outreach programmes, but now this was impossible due to overload. Finally, the BBC features calls by EastEnders actress Rose Ayling-Ellis for sign language lessons to be made freely available to those who need them, including parents and carers of deaf children. The British Sign Language user says she cannot believe that some parents and guardians of deaf children have to pay for tuition. The cost of an accredited course can be anywhere between £200 and £700. Martin McLean, Senior Policy Advisor at the National Deaf Children's Society, says funding is inconsistent and a postcode lottery, with some local authorities funding it whilst others don't. Spokesmen for leaders across all 4 home nations have made statements in support of improving access to BSL, but only the Welsh Government says it is already included in the curriculum for schools. In 2022, the British Sign Language Bill was passed, recognising BSL as an official language, and the Department for Education in England says it is working towards a BSL GCSE, which should be available from September 2025. A spokesperson for the Scottish Government has said that its teaching council is working with the University of Edinburgh on the development of an undergraduate degree in primary education and BSL. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
This is 2 Minute Tech with Steve Woods, your tech briefing on Teachers Talk Radio.
Hello, this week I'm going to discuss tech that will help you battle one of the worst things that can possibly happen in school, the summer. Nothing is worse than melting all day while trying to deliver lessons, yet we all have to suffer it. Let's see what tech has to offer you. Through searching the web, I found a few cool gadgets, pun totally intended. Starting with the cheapest, a neck fan. It looks like an 80s pair of headphones around your neck. Rechargeable with different speed settings. It's got some decent reviews and at £14 may be worth a try. Although high settings have more noise, so it might not be great for quiet times. For £20 you can get a personal air cooler. This has a tank of water, so not only fans you, but uses the water to super cool the air. Nice. £29 gets you a waist fan. Clip it onto your belt, or use the belt supplied and it blows up your shirt. Again, rechargeable and you can choose a front or back position. As with the previous though, noise may be a problem. Next, staying with the fan idea, for £79 you can get a cooling vest. This is a vest filled with fans, not unlike those you see on novelty inflatable fancy dress suits. The fans pass cool air over you and you stay cool. Again, noise is a factor here though. If you're willing to splash out for £100, how about a cooling vest with elements instead? Basically, it looks like an FBI bulletproof vest you see on TV, filled with reusable ice packs. It's obviously very quiet, however, will make squeezing through tight spaces a little more difficult. Also, preparation is needed as the packs will need to be frozen overnight. In conclusion, fans are the cheapest way to go, and you look like you're standing in hero wind, but noise is a factor. Vests may keep you cool, but you certainly will not look it. I suppose you could always try sticking an ice pack in a plastic bag and putting it in your pocket. What do you do to stay cool? Let us know at TT Radio Official. I'm Steve Woods, and that was 2 Minute Tech.
2 Minute Tech with Steve Woods, your tech briefing on Teachers Talk Radio. Live from Swansea, this is the Twilight Show with Nathan Gynn on Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
Bore pawb, croeso I Abertawe. Hello everyone, welcome to Swansea. Welcome to the Twilight Show here on Teachers Talk Radio. And if you are listening live, don't forget that you can join in the conversation by messaging us in the Podbean chat. If you're listening back, don't worry, you can still join in the conversation if you're listening to us on iTunes or on Spotify or even on your Amazon Alexa. You can tweet us at TT Radio Official and join the conversation there. You can also follow us on Instagram and on Facebook. Now, tonight's topic, the thing we're talking about is I am trying to convince you that what we currently do in schools for new staff, when new staff join us, is at best we do orientation. And we put some policies in front of them. The ICT acceptable use policy is the one that springs to mind. And we do orientation. We maybe show them around the building once. What we should be doing at least is induction and what I prefer. And as we share some examples, and there are some stunning ones that we'll hear, some real things to think about coming up a little bit later on, is onboarding. Okay, if we want to build our employer brand, if we want to be a school that people want to work at and want to stay working at in these tough recruitment times, we need to be thinking in terms of onboarding a little bit more than just induction or orientation. Now, I'm going to give you a quote from schoolgovernance.net.au about, from their article, Induction Programs, Do They Really Matter? They quote Bro and Wong, who say, an induction process is the best way to send a message to your teachers that you value them and want them to succeed and stay. Putting in the time and effort to help new employees transition into their role demonstrates the school's commitment to supporting staff members and their professional development. Now, it's a really interesting take, and in fact, you'll hear me folding my bit of paper. I'm going to put that right in front of the microphone because I'm going to come back to that as we go through what's possibly the Bible for me at the moment. It's from the Society for Human Resources Management. It's outside of education, but kind of we're bringing it in, and these multifaceted skills that we need as school leaders or working in education to pull on different things. It's called Onboarding New Employees, Maximizing Success, and they start with a kind of quote on by the table of contents page that says, research and conventional wisdom both suggest that employees get about 90 days to prove themselves in a new job. The faster new hires feel welcome and prepared for their jobs, the faster they will be able to successfully contribute to the firm's mission. Now, that frames it from the employer's point of view, that employees have to prove themselves. I would flip that on its head and actually say that most of your staff will know by half term, if they're going to stay long term or if they're just going to see it out. And there is a problem for me with staff transfer windows in that, once you're disenfranchised from your employer, you can plod and tread water for a long time there, and that's not efficient and effective for your school. And certainly it's not good for your mental health or your well-being, as you're looking elsewhere. And there are more chances now elsewhere. Now, an example they talk about the formality and comprehensiveness of onboarding programs varies widely across organisations. And those considered best in class for onboarding have more formal onboarding programs. I am hammering the onboarding words at the moment, I know, but it's something I want us to take away. They give an example of global beauty company L'Oreal, who says, our aim is to develop successful, committed, and mutually beneficial relationships with each of our employees. I love that as we're developing a mutually beneficial relationship here. It's not, I want my employee to work for me as the employer. We're developing a relationship. The company supports onboarding with a 2-year, 6-part integration program called the L'Oreal Fit. Okay. New employees, this is. People maybe who have experience. So I'm not talking about NQTs or ECTs just. Some of the things they do is training and roundtable discussions, meetings with key insiders, on-the-job learning supported by line management, individual mentoring and support, and field and product experiences such as site video visits and shadowing programs. Now, how much of those things happen for your staff, your new staff as they join? Meetings with key people, roundtable discussions. They say field and product experiences. I'd say lesson observations or, team teaching. Are they built into a program for new staff? Do you give them the time? Because I'd say, joining a new school, we need to start thinking about putting protected time in the same way we have protected time for an NQT or an ECT. There are 2 examples they give of different approaches. And I'd love you to weigh up where you think you are. There's informal onboarding, which refers to the process by which an employee learns about his or her new job without an explicit plan. I'd say most educational establishments, I think we sit somewhere in there, sink or swim. You're going to get in. You'll find it out as you go. You'll find out the photocopier code. Then they have formal onboarding. This refers to a written set of coordinated policies and procedures that assist an employee in adjusting to his or her new job in terms of both tasks and socialization. There's that word again. We talked about it in the first half, socialization, being part of a team, being part of something more than just meeting and knowing the names of the other staff. I really think there's something to unpick there. So we've got these 2 different parts. As far as what onboarding is, according to the theory here, they say that there's 4 distinct levels, and we'll try and think about them in an educational context here. The 4 C's they give them. The first one is compliance, and that's the lowest level, and it includes teaching employees the basic legal and policy-related rules and regulations. I know we do that because the number of acceptable ICT use policies I've read moving between schools, we do compliance. Second C is clarification. This refers to ensuring that employees understand their new jobs and the related expectations. Okay. That to me sits a little bit more than maybe what we sometimes do, which is give them a job role. Give them a list of expectations. That clarification, I love this idea of a round table discussion. We talked earlier about a safe space to do that. How are you doing that for your new staff? How are you giving them clarification? The third C is culture, and it's a broad category that includes providing employees with a sense of organisational norms, both formal and informal. I know in conversations leading up to this show, we've talked about, maybe we should be writing down these unwritten rules. There are things you take for granted, and particularly if you've been at a school a long time. And that's why I am suggesting that a good person to lead onboarding or to support with onboarding is your most recently onboarded member of staff, because they know the expectations. You as assistant head, as deputy head, wrote the policies. Maybe you grew up with the policies there. You trained with them. You've been there. They are part of you. And so you don't see them. It's the curse of the expert that we see yet again. So compliance, clarification, culture, and the last one, connection, refers to the vital interpersonal relationships and information networks that new employees must establish. Connection. And I'll leave that hanging in the air for a second, because I've mentioned it a couple of times, and in the example I gave from a local authority, as far as we got were meet colleagues. Now we're talking about connection, and that's something deeper. They talk about some levels between this, these different things. There's level 1, passive onboarding. That's that kind of informal expectation, some role clarification, but mainly the compliance, and then it's sink or swim. Then we get a little bit higher to high potential onboarding. And apparently about 50% of firms out there in the wider world are at this level, where they have processes, but maybe they're not fully established, but a systematic way. Okay. Final level is level 3, and that's proactive onboarding. Only about 20% of organizations out in the real world do this, and we'll give some examples in a second. Okay. They talk about, that we've talked about the benefits and how that goes, and I want to reflect on them, and we will bring this back to teaching, I promise. And if you have comments to share about how this applies to your teaching, definitely, but I think we have to learn from the outside world. And the first example I'm going to give you, shared in this book, is IBM. They talk about it as their assimilation process. I don't like the name, but I like the thinking. And they talk about 3 parts to it: affirming, beginning, and connecting. And we hear that word again, connecting. So, it was the 90s and the early 2000s, and, IBM, are a big company. They have a philosophy that's boiled down to a simple concept, and they're looking to recruit and hire the best people to do it. They realized that their new hires would have different needs than their longer tenured employees. And they created this assimilation process. Okay, so we start with affirming, and this occurs the new employee's start date and includes welcoming the new employee, preparing a workstation, assigning a coach. That you are affirmed, you're part of us, you belong here now. The beginning, and this part, it's their first 30 days. They break it down to that. On the first day, there's strict rules to ensure the new employees met in person, introduced to the team, has a functional area to work. Okay, introduced to the different check-in systems, etc., that they need to do. Then there's connecting, which is their third part, and this is during the first year and consists of 3 phases. There's an ask coach, a safe person to ask these questions that we think are silly, we're maybe embarrassed to ask, so never do. What do we wear on an inset day? These things that that can make us look silly. So that's how IBM do it. We've got another example where we talk about Kellogg's, W.K. Kellogg, the founder, 100-year-old company, and he famously said, "I'll invest my money in people." Okay, we're now in the 21st century, and they still use this approach. They have a 30-day, a 60-day, and a 90-day checklist to check that they are onboarding people correctly. Okay, an onboarding track record tool, analyzing strengths and weaknesses. This is not left to chance. These are people working at this level 3 proactive onboarding to make sure that they are investing in people and that they are, living up to that. I folded it, and I said I'd fold it, and I put it down. Here it is. That they are, as the school governance quote gave us, an induction process to send a message that your teachers, that you value them and you want them to succeed and stay. Researchers have identified 4 levers, for affecting change in this and the things that they impact on our onboarding process. The first is about self-efficacy and, the degree that a new employee feels confident to do their job. That's something we need to think about, and that sits at that early level of compliance and clarification. They also talk about role clarity, and I think this is something that we sometimes lack in education. Knowing if we're doing the right thing, knowing what the right thing is, particularly as education fragments and we do things differently. You can move from one type of school to a different one, and approaches can be entirely different and at odds with each other. And you could have been a fantastic teacher at one school and struggle at another, or you could think you're struggling at one school and move to another one and really shine. And those are things. There was a study of employees in the United States and the United Kingdom and found that businesses lose an estimated $37 billion each year as a result of employees not understanding their jobs. Now, for us, that's probably not dollars, that's educational outcomes. And we need to be doing everything in our power to make sure we are being the most efficient, the most effective for our young people. One of the things the researchers also found was role conflict. And in that sense, if you are recruiting middle leaders or even teachers, we have to understand our roles, that clarity, to be able to work effectively together. Another one that they looked at for successful onboarding was the social integration. And we've talked about this. 60% of managers who fail to onboard successfully cite the failure to establish effective working relationships as a primary reason for it failing. You need to be making time to engage small talk with colleagues, arranging informal social interactions such as lunches and coffee breaks, participating in voluntary company functions. They give the word, staff events, and trying to build a relationship with the supervisors by taking on new responsibilities, successfully completing assignments. All of these things need to happen, and we need to think about them happening at 30, 60 and 90 days. People make up their minds really quickly, according to the research, according to the literature from the HR profession. So this is something we need to think about because it has an impact. When surveyed, organisations with perceived effective onboarding had improved retention rates by 52%, improved productivity by 60%, and improved customer satisfaction, which for us is happy young people, by 53%. This is where we should be looking. It's not CPD, it's onboarding that we need to focus our time into. Now, as I say, there are a few things where we can take from the wider world. We can take from, businesses, but we are not IBM. We are not Microsoft. Microsoft has a corporate mission to enhance new employee experience through high quality, scalable onboarding programs and frameworks that support Microsoft's business goals and aspire culture and encourage community. We might not be them. We might be a tiny village school, primary school. But there is effective practice in here. And I want to share some views, because if we don't look beyond what we currently do, we'll never do better than we currently are. And I want to share some examples of what's considered effective onboarding practice. These are from the United States. And I wanted to get something that we could discuss that looks a little bit broader. It's maybe something a little bit differently. And I think there'll be things in here that surprise you. It's from the Association for Supervision and Curriculum Development. And, obviously in this blog about different ways of bringing new people, having successful induction programs and modelling effective teaching during their in-service training, there are some bits that really stick out for me. And these they call exemplar induction programs. So the first one is from an area in Arizona, Flowing Wells School District. My reading, and I'm not 100% up, this feels like a local authority, but they have new teachers join them. And the things that they do when a new teacher joins, a bus tour. The district superintendent acts as a tour guide on a chartered bus trip through the school district. Trivia contest introduces new teachers to the district's culture. For example, one question asks, how did Flowing Wells School District get its name? Apparently in 1881, the Allison brothers discovered a water at the base of the park there. How much do your teachers know about the location and how embedded the connecting, the belonging of that place? And this is something that, I have seen work incredibly effectively as a staff development, as a grounding of your staff team. Okay. And we saw it through COVID, of getting out into the community and seeing where our young people live. Do all of your teachers just drive in by car into catchment from the nice part of town and not walk the streets that the children walk on? there is something so powerful there. And particularly for someone, I have often been an outsider in the towns that I have moved to because I move around a lot. And to get to know the area is important. So if you had a new staff member join you this year, or you have someone moving from a different part of the country, I can think of nothing better than getting a caretaker or a teaching assistant or someone who lives in the community, maybe a governor, to walk them around, walk them the route that their class will walk to school, or some of their class will walk to school, and show them the local area. Where is the local park? When the kids say that they're playing somewhere, do your teachers know what that place looks like? Because there is something there that brings us together and connects us. I think that is such a powerful idea and something that I will take forward. Another thing, they've got demonstration classrooms. Master teachers set up their rooms to model first day of school in an effective classroom. Afterwards, observers discuss with the master teacher strategies that a new teacher found useful. Okay, we know we do this for NQTs and ECTs. Do you do this for all teachers? Do they get to observe a lesson before you expect them to do it? Or do you expect of them that they can read your school's teaching and learning policy and then just go out and do it? And there is a fine line there, because I said earlier on that we need to pitch it correctly, but pitching to experts does not mean forgetting that you do things differently. There is a different thing. A couple of other things they say that maybe I'm less keen on. They talk about a graduation luncheon at the end of several days of new teacher induction activities. They honour new teachers with a graduation celebration. It's a bit on the nose for me, maybe a bit far, but certainly, what I said earlier about is your first staff your first staff get together, your first staff social event at Christmas. That is a long time to wait to get to know people. We heard earlier on that I think something like 60% of Australians in the workplace feel lonely. Well, there's something that can be done. And I would be advocating for your having an early staff function at the start of the year. Possibly use some of your inset time for it. I don't know. But there is power to it. And particularly if you find that you have new staff joining or you have high turnover rates, there's something to think about there. A couple of other bits then from another school. This is from La Fourche Parish Public Schools in Louisiana. They have monthly support group meetings at district level, okay, maybe at an academy level, but certainly at a school level. Can you timetable in support group meetings for your new teachers so that they can ask those questions that they feel afraid to ask? Like, how do I get the photocopier to staple my booklets? Or who do I need to ask if I want to take a day off for my kids' sports day? There are questions that need to be asked. And if people feel alone, they don't have people to ask. The networking, the connection, they're so important. And that's a great one from them. I really do rate that. We've got one more example here of things that I wouldn't have thought about because, different countries have different cultures. But this one's from a Michigan school area, Port Huron. They said that, I think it says here that 10 years ago, they decided that one-shot staff development meetings don't work, and they wanted a sustained training program where they could keep new teachers close and nurture them step by step through the year and beyond. And they moved to a coaching model. Okay, they had the orientation part, but after that, they moved to a coaching and support model. And I think we forget about where it is. The article here ends with treating new teachers with dignity. They say that every child and every new teacher should be treated with dignity and respect. Every child and every new teacher can learn and succeed. Every new teacher is a human resource, a person who has invested years in preparing for a life dedicated to helping young people. We have a responsibility to ensure that these new teachers will learn and succeed, just as we have a responsibility to ensure that every child will learn and succeed. And that takes me back to what, Kellogg of the Kellogg Company, I forget his first name now, said. invest in people. And I said it earlier on, invest in teachers. It comes through to pay off in the children as well. Now, we have taken a tour there of the human resources elements, those 4 C's that were so important, and we will recap on them, but I want to leave time for us to talk in specifics. We've got some examples from educationalists, UK abound, and we will hear them just the other side of these important messages.
It's time for a fresh start to language learning. Pearson EdXL's new student-centred French, German and Spanish 2024 GCSEs cater to the needs of all learners, regardless of their background, ability or reason for studying. Rooted in learned language knowledge, their assessments are transparent and accessible, allowing all students to showcase their language skills. Through inclusive and relatable content, the new Pearson EdXL MFL GCSEs build a shared cultural capital that helps students develop an understanding of and appreciation for the wider world. Find out more at go.pearson.com/MFL GCSE 24.
This programme has been brought to you by the Happy Confident Company. Our clinically approved, ready-to-go wellbeing and mental health programme will help your pupils thrive. In only 10 minutes a day, you'll be able to deliver social and emotional learning and wellbeing tools throughout your school. To find out more, visit us at www.happyconfident.com.
Live from Swansea, this is the Twilight Show with Nathan Gynn on Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
Bordab Pab Croeso Abatawi. Hello everyone, welcome to Swansea. Welcome to the Twilight Show here on Teachers Talk Radio. If you're just joining us, don't worry. This will be available as a podcast on Apple, Amazon, iTunes, which is Apple, I nearly said again. Spotify, of course, is the other one as well. And of course, on our website, ttradio.org, where there's a listen back page. You can type anything you like in there and search our thousands of previous shows to find a show that meets your current educational vibe, I don't know, taste, thing, interest. That's the word. Your current educational interest, and you can listen to them then, or you can do what I do, which is listen to them in order as they go through the week. And I do enjoy that. When I get to a Saturday and I know which shows are on, so I try and keep track. But yeah, if there's something you've got that's come up, maybe it's you're doing a little bit of work on reading. Type reading into the search bar, and it will pull up all our previous episodes and all the previous guests who've spoken on that topic. Tonight, we're talking about onboarding new staff. You've got a new staff member, you're lucky enough to have found a teacher and recruited them. You want to keep them. How do we use onboarding? It's more than induction, it's more than orientation. How do we use it to make sure that we not only hold on to our staff, but they become effective members of our team quickly? The quote I've been using from Bro and Wong is, an induction process is the best way to send a message to your teachers that you value them and want them to succeed and stay. We've talked about the 4 C's of onboarding, which is compliant, the lowest level, that orientation of just giving them the school's ICT acceptable use policy. We've talked about the clarification, which is the second C and needs to happen, so that we're clear and how that can be done and how we make it safe to ask those potentially we feel are silly questions. We've talked about the culture, that broad category of understanding the social norms, the organizational norms of how we work, and how we can use coaching and peer mentoring to do that, how we can use observation and feedback to really tap in to that thing that you have invested so much of your school improvement time in developing. And the final one, the one that I think is so often forgotten, connection. It is not merely meeting your colleagues. It is building an interpersonal relationship to form those information networks across all of our employees so that we can work effectively as a team and know who to go to. Making sure those happen at appropriate time. Don't leave it till Christmas for your first staff do. Now, I want to give you a few tips. I said we'd share some from educationalists because we have skated across all of the industries as we've talked, because there's stuff we can learn from each of them, particularly when it comes to HR. The first 5 tips I've got for new staff induction come from teachertoolkit.co.uk. Number 1, less is more. Don't overplan the day by filling it with death by PowerPoint presentations. I'd also say death by handout as well for people to read. Get those key messages out there, key documents, and think about what order you're giving them in and when. Number 2, they've got is pre-record key sessions. I hadn't even thought about this, but this has been written in 2022. We are post-COVID. Everyone knows remote learning now. And actually, I find that supportive. I was talking to a colleague today about prevent training and the difference between doing prevent training online and doing prevent training in person. And I really like those refreshers that are online and people trust me to do in my own time and fit around what I'm doing. I like it. Recorded key sessions. And of course, you can use them again to save time and be more effective. Number 3, make it interactive. We've talked about this so much, but we know what good learning looks like in the classroom. And it is always lectures and having to read handouts. So how can we do that for our staff as well? Number 4, time with their teams. So many of the C's relate to that connection and connectedness and learning the culture, allowing time for clarification and a little bit of safety, because I will say this, there are things that people will ask of colleagues that they will not ask of line managers. Those questions that need clarification, it's one of our 4 C's. And number 5, get feedback. We need to ask new staff how they found the induction, but also we need to involve, for me, previously inducted staff in the induction process. The best person to guide someone through joining the new school is the person who joined it this year, not yourself as deputy head who joined the school 15 years ago. Use all of the attributes that people have and meet those 4 C's: compliance, clarification, culture, and connection. They're all things that we need to look at. Now, I have more examples because I wanted to throw them at you. Make sure we were giving as much time and thought as possible. And this one's from novaceducation.com blog. They suggest, show your appreciation. Send a note of gratitude to your new teachers over summer. Welcome them. Thank them for joining your team. This is part of that employer brand we were talking about. I think for sure, do you want to be a place where people want to work? Do you want to be a school that the talent wants to gravitate to, that people want to be a part of and want to stay at? That's something you have to cultivate. Show your appreciation. The next one, help new teachers feel part of the team. They've got a quote here from Peter Senge. When you ask people what it's like being part of a great team, what is most striking is the meaningfulness of the experience. People talk about being part of something larger than themselves, of being connected, of being generative. It becomes quite clear that for many, their experience of part of truly great teams stand out as singular periods of life lived to its fullest. I love that as a description, of being part of a team. We talked about at the start of the show, I think it was 60% of Australians feel lonely at work. Such a sad thing to think, and not a good way to be, not an effective way for us to make the most of our teachers at all. Next on their list is make connections. It's so interesting how these different threads come through in slightly different orders from the different bits of advice that we see. Connect your new teachers with their mentors as soon as you can. Help them make connections before their first day of orientation. Encourage them to ask questions. See if your PTA will help connect them as well. For me, that also includes getting them out in the community to connect them to your catchment area. The next piece of advice from this one, at least, is provide options. And this isn't something that I thought about, but making informal observations an option, adding in additional observations, tailoring that induction and onboarding to meet their needs as an individual, to make them feel valued as an individual. And check in with them, of course. Something we forget. How soon, and is it timetabled for you to check in with your new staff, or is it something you just remember to do, maybe, if they're lucky enough, or is it in your diary now that I'm going to have a check-in meeting with my new teachers in the second week back to see how things are going? So interesting, so important. The final piece that I want to draw 5 ways to make staff induction processes more effective is from teachwire.net. Before we wrap things up, and I reiterate some of the really important discussions we've had, but we give you those tips and you'll see what I mean by these common things coming through. Number 1, they give is introducing the organisation or role. It's easy to overwhelm staff, and for me this sits in one of our 4 C's of clarification at that second level. Staff handbook can be helpful, but it's important that individuals can digest and understand that information in the context of their role. That clarification is important. Number 2 for them is mentoring and coaching. The induction mentor's role is critical. Do you even have an induction mentor? You might have an NQT mentor or an ECT mentor. Do you have an induction mentor for new staff? Is that a role? Is that something that we need to think about as a first step? Where are we in our school development plan for onboarding people really well? Okay. And that helps with the culture of the school, that sense of what is a organizational norm. Number 3 for them is agreeing performance targets and identifying learning needs. I know it's something that we do. Does it sit within onboarding for me? No, I think that's a separate thing. I think that's continual professional development for me. That's something slightly different. Number 4 for them is personalized professional learning. I do agree with that, but tailored induction, tailored onboarding that meets the needs, that treats them as a unique and individual professional, is something there. Monitoring of performance there. And I hate to say that the Teachwire one for me there falls a little bit back for us into those lower levels of induction where we aren't getting to the levels of onboarding that I hope that we look at, that passive onboarding still. Now remember, the key things here that we're looking to look for are increased job satisfaction, jumpstart those relationships at the start and make them feel welcome, make them feel happy. We know that higher job satisfaction means better rates of work and efficiency and effectiveness and retention in the long term. Increased performance, the clarity and expectation, all of those things are things that are going to improve performance. And we've got to remember that when we talk about improved performance, we're talking about improved education for young people here. And of course, the final part of this that we've talked about many times over now, and we started with, is inoculating against turnover. Providing that support through feedback, coaching, follow-up to make sure that people want to stay with us. And I think if there is schools that aren't worried about turnover at the moment, then they are very lucky. You are getting something right, but maybe it won't be that way forever because there is a shortage of teachers. And so we need to hold on to the ones we get. And if you find talent, you need to develop it and hold on to it. So from tonight, I will leave us with that quote again from Bro and Wong. An induction process is the best way to send a message to your teachers that you value them and want them to succeed and stay. Putting in time and effort to help new employees transition into their roles demonstrates the school's commitment to supporting staff members and their professional development. The 4 C's then of onboarding are compliance, the basics of policy and expectation, rules and regulations, clarification and the opportunities to be clear on our job role and how we fit in with other people, culture, which you've spent so long developing as a school, how you do things your way, and the organisational norms and the unwritten rules need to be learned through peer and mentoring along the way. And the final one for me, the connection. And I do hope that when people are putting together their induction programs, onboarding programs for next year of new staff joining, they think truly about connection, and not just connectedness, knowing people's names, not just connectedness to the school, but to the community and to the location as well, because those are such important parts of us truly understanding the people we're working with and the young people we're supporting. Now tonight, thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining in with the conversation. If you want to listen to this show or any others, visit ttradio.org, where you'll be able to find thousands of shows. You can search by host, you can search by guest, you can search by topic, and you can find the things to do. It leaves only one thing for me, which is good night from here in South Wales, which is Nos Da to those of you learning to speak Welsh along with myself. Nos Da from here in South Wales. We'll see you next time. Good night, and tune in and talk it out.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.